And I think that was the furthest we drove to not play a show ever. And we got kicked out of the Real World House.
Welcome, everyone, to This Was The Scene, the podcast that takes a look back at the late 90s, early 2000 punk scene. I am your host, Mike Doyle. Before we start, I get it that Patreon is kind of lame for some people and not a lot of people will sign up for it, but if you'd like to and you feel less lame, just to help us out, I have a tier that's $1 a month. It's just for people who listen to the podcast. There's no extra thing you get from it. It's just if you've been a listener this whole time, and you want to support it, that's awesome. Help out with the bills to run this thing. I also have a $3 tier for the episodes that are not on podcast apps anymore, so you can check that out as well. And if you don't want to do any of that, just go check out my Instagram. It's This Was The Scene, and that's usually where I post the most stuff about what's coming up and just some random shit. The stories are really where it's a lot of fun. This episode is just a compilation of clips from 5 episodes that I enjoyed. I've seen other podcasts do this, so I figured I'd give it a try because there's some episodes that some of you may not have heard before, so this might entice you to go, oh, let me go back and listen to that, or I didn't know that episode existed. Because right now I've got 220 that are up, and that's a lot of episodes to look through. Which technically you could do if you go to my website and then look at the episodes tab. It has every single episode in there, so you can visually see, like, oh, this is who, he's interviewed up to date. I also have a bunch of interviews in the queue, so don't worry, there's more coming up. I just got pretty busy with work, and then next month I'm slammed, which is a good thing. So that kind of digs into my time for editing these episodes, but I definitely will. Next week I'll definitely have a new episode up. So the way this is structured is I'll announce who the episode is, and then the episode will play, and then I'll stop it there, and then I'll announce the next episode, and so on and so forth. So it should be not like super long episode, but hopefully some of you enjoy it. And here are the episodes where I pulled clips from. Saves the Day with Brian Newman, episode 183. Dynamite Boy with Sean Neal, episode 200. Midtown with Rob Hitt, episode 87, which is the most downloaded episode to date. Eyeball Records with Alex Eyeball, episode 189. And Hankshaw with Harold Hasselback, episode 169. Lastly, if you need an explainer video for your company that explains what you do in 60 to 90 seconds, check out my animation company, drive80.com. Last week I came up on my 13-year anniversary, which is pretty crazy. So I pretty much know what I'm doing. So if you want total professionalism on a project and you want to talk some punk rock here and there from back in the day, then this seems like a great fit. Again, check it out, drive80.com. Also, if you have questions about the podcast or anything or want to tell me anything, just email thiswasthescene@gmail.com. I realize I never tell people this. I do reply to all emails, and just feel free to email me there. That's all I got to say, so feel free to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with anyone who would love some punk rock nostalgia. With that said, let's get started. Here's a clip from the episode with Brian Newman from Saves the Day.
Also, when I think the ego inflation started to really kick in, because, you're 20 years old, 21 years old at that point, being told basically, in 3 years you're going to be, on tour with Foo Fighters or something. You start to, there's no reason not to believe it based on who's telling you that. And then there's no like checks or balances. There's no one saying anything else in our ears. So we just rolled with it and really, really went into that Stay What You Are recording process from like this place of like incredible confidence in what we were doing. And I think that really does come across in that album. Like it's like a leap in maturity.
Oh, totally.
That is hard to convey. And, there was other factors. I don't know how much you've heard about this part, but like definitely kind of everyone except for Eben we got very into psychedelics. And so that's part of the sound change you hear going into Stay What You Are. Like,
I've never heard that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, big part. Beatles, psychedelics. I mean, we were in some fantasy land of like thinking we were some like 1960s rock stars or something. But yeah, the psychedelic thing was huge. I mean, that also played into me leaving eventually. Like all the albums we made, the only one I can actually listen to that I played on is Stay What You Are. The other ones just sound so young to me in a way that this is a weird thing to say, but I think because we were so sheltered, the psychedelic thing helped us, especially I think me, Chris, and Ted, just kind of like grow up very quickly. Not even necessarily like maturity wise, but like awareness of the greater musical world and like what influences we could bring in, and that there's a world outside of this little scene we're in. And and a lot of the lyrics in Stay What You Are a huge jump for Chris. There's some of this, but singing about girls is like a lot of Through Being Cool to like, talking, half the songs on Stay What You Are about like existential dread and death, and that stuff is all, This Is Not an Exit is basically our, LSD song. That is a full on LSD song. That's where that comes from for sure. Lyrically.
Shit,
and
that's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we roll into LA in this super heady mindset, and at that point, the whole straight edge thing, we were way moved outside of that. So there's a lot of drugs and a lot of, not like we were being bad people, but it was just totally uncontained. We were in this apartment in West Hollywood that Vagrant paid for us to be in, that we were subletting from this actor, Gerard Butler, who,
holy shit, yeah, he was in
like
the
in like 300, or was he in 300?
Yeah, he's fucking Leonidas, I think.
So I think, Mike,
shit.
so he basically had one of the costumes from 300 in one of the closets.
Get the fuck out of here.
I kid you not. Or it was like a mock-up of one of the costumes, because he had basically moved everything out for us to be there, except for some insane costume that, of course, I think was worn at different times by different people in the band. But that was an amazing experience. We had 2 months with Rob Schnaff, who had just finished, I think he had just done an Elliott Smith record before that. And we were just huge Elliott Smith fans. And, he was someone who, again, kind of was outside of the scene and just musically really sophisticated. And he brought a level of, because we actually had him for a couple weeks before we even started recording, just in a practice studio, and he helped us pare down songs. Like Jukebox Breakdown, I think originally was about another minute and a half longer, and he cut out a bunch of fluff, and he would kind of made a lot of those songs punchier than they would have been otherwise, even before the kind of recording process. And Cars and Calories, Chris wrote about a week before we started recording. He wrote that in LA, and that was just Chris of that era. Literally, he'd wake up and like, he's like, I think I have a song, and like within like 2 hours, he'd have Cars and Calories like almost completely finished. It was insane.
That's so nuts.
It was insane, yeah.
Next up is Sean Neal's interview about Dynamite Boy, episode 200.
It really came out, I think, like the last year and a half before I was finally done. I think I could feel the end nearing for me, and so it did become kind of a. And then I think the other part was, Adrian did tell the story of like the shit that Bob put me through with making me feel bad about my weight.
Well, I want to talk about that, like, and get your viewpoint, because he brought that up, and I wanted to hear if you wanted to discuss, because like some people had things happen back in the day and they're like, it's all smoothed over now, or I don't know, like, what was that whole perspective? What was your perspective on all that?
Again, in hindsight, I understand Bob was just trying to run a business, and his goal was not to. One thing to start off us signing to the label and being kind of like a friend deal. Like, he's a small label. Like, it's just a guy who's helping us, putting our albums out, helping us go on tour, like, stuff like that. To like, now he's actually a full-time business. He's got kids. He's got a life. He's doing this for a living, right? He's got to make it work. And so he's trying to think of what's the next stage to make these people the most successful. And in his mind, or in his view, one of the big things holding us back was our image. And for me, there's almost nothing you could say to me that would piss me off more than to be like, oh, well, your band will never be big because you guys don't look the part. No, because again, I can name you a million bands that don't quote unquote look the part, right? Just because we don't look like the bands that are on MTV. Everybody was being driven so heavily by like MTV and stuff in the late 90s, early 2000s. They were like, oh no, you have to look like those guys. And then at the time, the music was adapting, and so was the looks, right? You had like all the emo kids, and it's like skinny little kids in skinny jeans, and it's like, look, man, I've never been that. you signed the band. This is what I look like. I still look like this. Like, it's like, what the fuck? What does that matter? Like, I don't understand why that. But like I said, now I understand. It did fuck me up. It hurt my feelings. It made me not trust him. It made me not trust anybody in the music business after that, pretty much. Because I felt like they were all liars. They were all trying to get something. You know, before that, kind of, you're hoping that it's a partnership. You know, it's us together, and man, we're gonna fucking change the world together, whatever. And then at that point, it becomes, oh no, I'm a commodity to you, and I get that, and you know, I get that I am, but like, I would never say something like that to somebody. I would never in my life make fun of, or not make fun of, or make someone feel bad about who they were. I thought that's what we were all into punk rock for. I thought that was the reason why we were there, was that like, we'd already gone through that. I'd already went through that shit in high school and, you know, when I was younger. I'd already been through it. So I'm in my, you know, early 30s, late 20s, early 30s, and I've got this guy saying this to me. It's like, who the fuck are you, dude? Are you fucking kidding me? Why don't you get your ass in the back of a fucking van and drive across the country and play shows? And then you tell me what I need to look like, or what I need to sound like, or what I need to, you know what I mean? Like, it really fucked me up. It led to some really bad feelings between us for a while. And you know what? That's actually not true. It didn't lead to any bad feelings. It led to me feeling like shit for a long time about it. I don't think I took it out on him, or I didn't really bring it up to our relationship as far as like our business relationship or our personal relationship as friends. I just was like, I felt like I just saw someone's true colors, and it was like, oh, okay. So I do have to keep you at arm's length. I can't fucking trust you. You're not a friend. You're literally, you're looking at me as a commodity. So I get our relationship now. You clarified it for me. Thank you.
Was this before Somewhere in America was recorded, or after?
It was right before, and then after he really cranked it up. We got into a really big fight after Somewhere in America. I can't remember it. I don't even remember what the reason was, but we were in California at their offices, and the fight was so bad that our roadie was sitting in the van outside, and he could hear me screaming from in the office at him. Like it almost turned into a fist fight. It was like the compilation of all these things. You guys should be writing music like this. You guys should look like this. And I was just like, why don't you just fucking let us go, man? Why don't you just say, you know what? This is done. We're good. You guys go find a different label. Like, I don't understand why you want to keep us around if all you want to do is change us. Like, what? I don't understand that. And he looked at it as though, no, I'm trying to help you get to the next level. And I was like, well, I don't want that. I don't want to do it on your terms. I want to do if it happens, it's going to happen because we're fucking good. It's not going to happen because I look the part and the music's okay. I don't give a shit about that side of it.
I mean, how do you possibly record that last album with all of this going on?
Just one. I was able to put all of my stuff to the side because we knew we wanted to do at least one more record. We had already written the stuff. Danny, the guitar player who had replaced Andrew after Andrew had quit, I had kicked him out of the band. And I am not proud to say, in almost exactly the same fashion, I almost got into a fight with him in Pittsburgh. But it was it sounds like it's such a dick. I was a dick. I mean, to be honest, they were not proud of any of those moments.
I mean, at least, you know, it's like, I think that the one thing about this podcast I love, it's very cathartic when people can look back and be like, you know, this is my true colors. It's like, yeah, be honest, you know. If you're self-reflecting.
Like I said, I was a dick at that point, but I think I was so stressed out that it was like anything I could blame my stress on, other than, hey, you put yourself in this position, Sean. What the fuck are you blaming everybody else for? Anything I could force that onto, I was like, okay, it's their fault. Oh no, I'll get in a fight with him. I don't, you know. I just wanted to record that last album. In fact, I got into a fight with Bob after he had sent us the check for the last album, and I was with Matt Riddle from No Use for a Name. He was at my house. They were playing in town. I had taken him out to dinner out at the Salt Lick outside of Austin. Joint. I took him out to Salt Lick for dinner, and he was hanging out with me and my wife at the time. And we were fixing to go to the show. I was ready to take him down to the show. I got into a screaming match on the phone with Bob from Fearless, and we had just gotten the check in the mail that day. And he was like, well, fuck it then. I'm just going to cancel the fucking... And I was like, great. I hung up and we drove straight to the bank and I deposited the check immediately. So he couldn't cancel the check on us.
Oh, shit.
And I mean, Matt was there, and Matt heard it and was he was hearing my end of the conversation, of course. And that's why, he had to listen to me bitching about the label all the way back to the office. He was just like, man, he was like, nothing changes. Trust me. He was like, at no level is this any different from anybody else. Same shit we go through, the same shit you're going through. It happens to everybody.
Next, we got Rob Hitt's interview about Midtown, episode 87. What was your perspective of being on Columbia?
Right. So it's pretty simple. If you're on an indie label, the idea typically is the indie label, whether or not you have a lot of success or just a little success, they'll continue to support you and be there for you in some capacity. Typically, and these are where the stories stem from, if you don't hit it at radio on a major label, they're done.
Yeah.
Like, they'll give you, it's so expensive to go to radio, and it's the only real way a major label cares to make any money is radio. Yeah, maybe today with playlisting and Spotify and streams and whatever it is, there's always going to be outliers. But even today, if you're not gonna slay it on radio, like they're not gonna care about you anymore. And that's the horror stories like of being on a major label. So for us, we were in a very unique position because I think our managers had an extremely good relationship with Columbia. I think the number one thing that we kind of did that hurt us a little bit was that, so we signed to Columbia, and then, if anybody's ever listened to the Forget What You Know album, which was the last Midtown album, sounds a bit different than the previous two albums. It's a lot darker. It's a lot more alternative-y. Like, everybody wants to be Radiohead or the Foo Fighters when it's 2005. Everybody thinks those are the, every band. We want to be them. So, we were thinking about that in the back of our minds when we were writing the songs. And the album comes out and it doesn't quite get the reaction we wanted to. So we start touring. The shows are a little smaller. It's not completely like embarrassing or anything like that. It's just like, it felt like, oh, wow, we just put a new album and we've leveled out. And I think that's what all of us in Midtown kind of felt. And we even felt it a little bit at the end of Living Well. I think when we saw some of these other bands just like flying by us, like, whoa, Thrice, and, every single band on Drive Thru, basically, So we're like, oh, okay, well, let's give this one more shot. And, so we got back from a tour, and I think it was like May 2005. And for a minute, we kind of just like said, I guess this is it. We never, to this day, I don't think we ever like made an official breakup. I don't think we did. I think we kind of just
Really
stopped. I think we kind of just stopped. So we were at this point where it was like, we were real fortunate because I think Columbia was going to give us one more chance to do an album. And I don't think it was us. I think it was their faith in our managers, to be honest. But they were going to give us the shot. And then I guess around this time with like, remember they had like The Faint that was on Saddle Creek, all these like electronic pop-ish bands started to pop up, and Gabe had started writing some songs. So I think at that point, especially with, Gabe's friendship with Pete Wentz from Fall Out Boy and all of these things, we had the opportunity, and I really wanted to do one more album. We had the opportunity to potentially do an album on Columbia, but Gabe's like, you know what? Besides us like batting heads because we weren't successful, we were batting. Yeah, everybody has their own quirks. Gabe has his quirks. I have my quirks. Tyler and Heath. But like at the end of the day, if we were successful, we would have been happy together, But my understanding from what I remember is that like, I think he already had a foot out because he had these new songs. And if he could get off Columbia, he could work with Pete on a band on Fueled by Ramen. Now, I don't know if it was that fast and connected or if that's like over a year's period of time where that all happened. But at that time, I was, so Midtown, basically, we internally said, okay, I guess this is it. We're broken up. And then, not publicly. And then Gabe started doing, at that same rehearsal spot, Cobra Starship. And, I was living in Brooklyn, and I met this guy, Alex Suarez, who lived above me. I'm like, hey, Alex, Gabe, my old singer, is starting a new band. You're like an awesome dude. why don't you like meet him and see if you all vibe for Cobra Starship? So he lived upstairs. Before that, and then after that, his friend Ryland, who actually played in like George Clinton or P-Funk Parliament Funkadelic when he was in school in Tallahassee, he was Alex's friend from Florida. So Alex got him to be the guitar player in Cobra. And one small tidbit that nobody really knows is that when Cobra Starship first started, I was at the point of like, because remember I had my drumming trials and tribulations. I was like, all right, well, I don't see how I can get better at drums living in Brooklyn. You don't have a basement, you don't have a garage. If you want to play drums, you got to go somewhere. You got to pay hourly. You got to bring your kick and your cymbals and your snare, and you got to set up and you got to break down, and then you got to commute back and forth. It just wasn't easy. So I'm like, if I can become a bass player in life right now, maybe I can get really good at bass. So the first like 2 weeks of Cobra Starship, I was the fucking bass player.
Really?
Swear to God, as a drummer that doesn't know how to play bass.
Holy shit!
And here's the thing: Alex Suarez, who became the bass player, I made him play drums, or I made him play keyboards or something like that, so I can play bass. He was the good bass player. And then I'm like, what am I doing? Like, why am I clowning around? I'm so much better in business and helping people than I am as an actual musician. So then I'm like, all right, this doesn't make any sense. So that's how but that's how Alex Suarez got into Cobra Starship and how Cobra Starship got started.
Here's a clip from Alex Eyeball's interview about Eyeball Records, episode 189. I'm seeing on Wikipedia that you did a Gaslight Anthem release. Did you do their first release?
Well, here's the funny story about Gaslight.
Or was it Epitaph?
It was Epitaph's demos.
There we go.
We took Epitaph's demos and we released them. No, what happened with Gaslight was we signed them when they were still called This Charming Man. And I was like, Brian, this is the worst fucking name I've ever heard in my life. You got to change your name. It does not represent your sound at all. Like, this is just not a good name. Brian changed the names of Gaslight Anthem. We signed contracts, whatever. We did press photo shoots. And then while we were recording it with Daniel Goodwin at the Clubhouse in Rhinebeck, New York. We recorded for like 5 days. And during that recording session, like everything just kept going wrong. The guitars wouldn't stay in tune. Brian was like really, really focused on using that guitar that would not stay in tune. So we had to like retune after every single take, and it was just so wearing. That whole session was just really, really difficult. And Benny was real unhappy with the studio. He didn't like his drum sound, and I think that they were having like an internal struggle as well, because I know Benny wanted to play, some faster stuff, because he's more of a punk rock drummer, more punk rock than Gaslight, obviously. And, Gaslight's like a rock and roll band. So we recorded a record, and it didn't come out as well as it should have. So we never released it.
Really?
Yeah, so there's an unreleased Gaslight record.
Does anyone else know? I've never heard that.
Yeah, apparently they re-recorded 3 songs off of it for their, for later releases.
For Sink or Swim?
But no, after that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Jesus.
But as far as those recordings, that session is on a reel somewhere, and that's it. It just never came out. The fact that they were on Eyeball, the reason why they're still listed there is because it followed us all these years later, because we made the big announcement that we signed them and that we were working, and we posted demos back, in the MySpace days and everything like that to promote them. Everybody thought they were an Eyeball band, and they were for a moment, but that record just did not come out well, and we all decided that it's best to just kind of take a walk from it.
So why didn't you get Sink or Swim?
The dynamic of us working together just was not working. I like Brian as a person quite a lot, but as far as being a label and working with him, And probably maybe they didn't like the way we worked either, but we all felt it was better just to not release this record and let them move on. And that's when they went to side one.
Like when Sink or Swim comes out, and then 59 Sound, and then what was the other one? American Slang.
The American Slang, that's it.
So when you're seeing all that happen, what's going on in your head?
Oh, dude. I was so amped for those guys. I was so amped. I remember watching them like opening up for Bruce Springsteen in Hyde Park in London to like, I don't know how many thousands of people. And then having Bruce Springsteen come out during the Gaslight set and singing with him. And I was just like, part of me, to be completely blunt and honest, part of me was like, oh man, I could have been part of that. You know, like we could have been there with that. And the other part of me was like, you know, I bet if that record came out the way it was and was released, it would have hindered them more than helped them. So in hindsight, I think we made the right decision. But I still felt like, dang, I'm missing out on this awesome shit, and by choice, you know what I mean? But I was really, really happy for them. I was just bummed that we weren't part of it.
You know, it's funny. Like Brian comes up a lot just because he was in my old band for like the last year of when we were
That's
together.
right. Did know that. And you actually sat down and wrote and played with him, so you know that he likes to do things his own way.
Well, he was on a path. Even in the band, he was the second guitarist, and we're like, this is the position. I was like, I'm gonna take over singing all the songs because I've had a couple, and I'll do Chris's, and I'll take voice lessons, and we'll 2.5 step down so I can hit these fucking notes. And we were like a fucking machine. We were so fucking tight. And we go on tour for 2.5 months with Lawrence Arms, which is so long.
Lawrence Arms, you said?
Yeah, with Lawrence Arms, and then the old Wonder Years band. They connected with us for a couple weeks, and we just got so burned out. But like my relationship with Brian that was the first time he had ever been on tour.
The old Wonder Years, the California one?
The California one, yeah.
Brian and Shane and them?
Yeah.
From the Ghost.
And Caitlin and Josh, yeah, and then they did Ghost, and then he does Hanali.
I love those guys.
Yeah, I mean it was cool, but like Brian, he was just a weird fucking dude, and it's funny because when he quit the band, I was like, I'm not doing any more members. So I like him quitting the band was the reason like I left. I was like, I'm not fucking doing this shit anymore. And then years later, when I saw Gaslight come out, I was just like, good for him. And I've never looked at it being like, son of a bitch, that could have been me. Because at that point, I was like, I don't even want to fucking play music anymore. I don't give a fuck. But I saw him just blow up. I was like, dude. And every time I see that, I'm like, dude, that's awesome.
It is, right? It's like, it's so fucking cool, man. That kid came from where he came from, and he pulled it off. He did well, and he still is doing well. I mean, I'm talking about it like as if he's not around anymore or something, but he's still busting his butt.
Lastly, here's Harold Hasselback's interview about Hankshaw, episode 169. Yeah, like what's a story that you've never got to tell this is your moment to tell?
Is it okay if it's long?
Yeah, I gotta jump out of here in about 20 minutes.
I think it doesn't have to be that long. So there was, I think, dude, this was, I want to say, around the spring of 2000, or it could be 99. We had a friend, her name is Melissa Howard, from our town. And she was one of the cast members of the Real World Season 9. It was the first New Orleans Real World.
Oh, wait, what was her name?
Melissa Howard. So she was on the Real World. It was the first one in New Orleans. And she's like, yo, man, you guys should come up. She wanted the band to come up. And we're like, okay. So we wound up, we had a show in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So we're like, all right, hey, man, we got this show in Baton Rouge. We can just stop by. We'll just leave a few days early, and we'll go visit Melissa at the Real World house, and we'll stay there. And so we're like, all right, cool. So it wound up being, Milton, Johnny, Brian, the 4 Hankshaw guys, me, and then we took 2 of our friends, Mike Pipido, and then we also took PJ. So we get in the van, and we leave early in the morning. PJ winds up, he went on some all-night bender, and he wound up acquiring like almost two dozen pot cookies. So we get into the van, and I don't know, I think I ate like 4 of them on the trip up there. I ate like 4 of these cookies.
Jesus.
And we pull up to the Real World house, like to the side of it, because it was on St. Charles Street, this where all the rich people live. They were staying in some like old mansion on St. Charles Street. So we had to like park on some side street, and we opened the van door, and there's instantly these cameras, and there's these, lights, sound guy on a boom stand stuff, like fucking this bright light flashing in my eyes, there's just, and she's trying to talk to me like, oh yeah, my Asian brother's here, this is awesome, another Asian in the house, and I couldn't say a word. I'm like 4 cookies in, I can't, this camera's in my face, I can't speak, and I'm starting to freak out, starting to get paranoid. It was around Easter time, because I remember everybody goes into the house, and the Real World house is right by this little shop. And in the front of this little shop, they have this little Easter bunny city, with these little buildings, and they had like real live like bunny rabbits in it. So everybody goes inside to sign you have to sign this waiver if you're going into the house and all this bullshit. I was like, I'm not signing shit. I'm staying out here, and I'm going to hang out with these bunnies. So I hung outside, and I'm just staring at these bunnies for like 30 minutes. And then eventually somebody comes out, like, oh, dude, there you are. It's like, you coming in? So like, I got out of signing the waiver. We go inside the house. And, this is like the beginning of reality TV, right? Reality TV hasn't existed too long. This is like before Survivor, I think, or maybe Survivor had just started. I think maybe Big Brother had just started. But, MTV, they got the ball rolling with this Real World series. But, it was really strange, man. So we go into this house. None of the people are there, and it's a pigsty. They're like filthy, dude. There's like just dried up beans in this pot. Like, the house is filthy, dude. So we get into the house, and then we're all gonna go to sleep. So Melissa, her roommate, is at some rave, so she, we have enough room for everybody to sleep. And we're going to sleep. We shut the lights off. And once you shut the lights off, if you start talking, the camera people will come in there, turn the lights on, and start filming you.
Oh my God.
So so you can't just turn the lights off and just have a conversation without the cameras being there. They'll turn the lights on, they start filming you. So what the fuck, man? This sucks. So then, we have to act like we're 5 years old, and we're like, oh, we're, pretend sleep. Oh, we're sleeping, ho, ho, ho. And then they eventually leave, and they go away, and then we try to have a conversation again. We start talking. They bust in the fucking room. They turn the lights on. They start filming. I'm like, Jesus Christ, dude, this sucks. So eventually we just give up, and we go to sleep. So the next morning, I was the first one up, and I'm trying to turn the lights on in this house. But you can't turn the lights on, because everything's on a timer, and there's like this control room inside of the house, and they control everything. Every room is mic'd. They control all the lights in the house. There's the only place there's not a mic or a camera is in the bathroom. No, there actually is one in the bathroom, but not actually in
You can't
the
have a
toilet
camera,
stall.
right?
Yeah, not in the toilet stall. That's the only place there's not a camera. So yeah, I'm just in there. It's dark, because I got up really early. I can't find the lights, so I just start playing some like that shoot the moon game with the little rods and the ball or whatever, and I start eating cookies. So I'm like 2 cookies in, and all of a sudden the lights just go boom, 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 like this compound. The lights turn on. Like, I think it's like 9 o'clock sharp. The lights are on, and it's crazy. It's just a really weird experience. Basically, I'm just going to fast forward. Melissa, she had this job, like a part-time job at some like vintage clothing store. So we went to work with her, and then we just kind of, it was like around the what is it, the French Quarter, where everybody goes and parties and stuff.
Yeah.
So we go there, and then we wound up. I wound up falling asleep in the vintage clothing store because I was just already done. Everybody else went out to have drinks. And she gets off work, we go back to the house. And we decide, hey, they let us stay the night, let's do something nice. let's do something nice and let's clean up their house because it's filthy. Their kitchen is filthy. We're just going to clean the house. While we're at the vintage clothing store, Milton decided he was going to buy a thong and a mink stole, and then he bought a wig. So we get back to the house, and he's cleaning the house in a thong. Because at the time, do you remember that song, the Thong Song by Cisco?
Yeah.
That was the huge song, I guess, at the time. So we actually had seen people like, in the French Quarter, like dudes or whatever, wearing thongs and like twerking in the street and stuff. We just thought it was that's hilarious. This is awesome. So Milton, he had his thong on, combat boots, and a mink stole. And he's cleaning up the house. And then at some point, he just starts running around the house, and he's jumping in the air, and I'm smacking his ass. And then these, the real world cameras come out. They're filming all this stuff. We start going ape shit. And then, in New Orleans, you can like walk around the streets with an open container. You can drink anywhere. It doesn't matter, right? So at some point, we realized these filthy animals, they don't have any trash bags. So we decide, hey, man, is there a Walgreens or is there somewhere we can go buy some trash bags? So like several blocks down the street, there was like a Walgreens. So we walked down there. Not all of us. I think it was me, Milton, Melissa, and like one other person. We walked down to the convenience store to get trash bags. And then Milton, he starts kind of walking around hunched over like a caveman. He has his mink stole on. He has this wig on. He has a thong on. And he's walking down St. Charles Street. And he's smelling rich people. Like he goes up to him and he's grunting and he's smelling rich people. And I'm just sitting there drinking like a huge gin. And I'm just laughing my ass off, dude. And the real world cameras actually followed. The sound guy and a camera guy, they followed us all the way down the street to this convenience store. So they go in there, Milton and Melissa, they buy some trash bags. And then he comes out, Milton has this gigantic Tootsie Roll. And he starts to bite into the Tootsie Roll. And I go, Milton, don't eat that Tootsie Roll. He's like, why not, man? I was like, dude, chew it up. Chew it up and make it look like a turd. And then just have it sticking out of your butt because you have to fall on. Just have it sticking out of your butt. And then you and I are going to walk into this church. So we go up there and the doors are locked and we can't get in there. So I start knocking on the door. And I think at some point, the sound guy who's from New Orleans gets pissed and he quits on set and walks off. And he says, I've had enough. These guys have disrespected the city of New Orleans. Because there was a lot of other antics I haven't gotten into. And this was just kind of like the climax. This was the last straw. This guy quits. So it was kind of like, dude, there's writers and producers, all this shit. It's a really weird experience. It's like you're lab rats and you're trapped in this maze. They just completely manipulate any situation. So if there's not cameras on our friend Melissa, she has to wear a hot mic, where they can hear everything she's saying. They can hear everything we're saying. And when we get back to the house, there's this phone, they call it the bat phone, and it's this red, rotary phone. It rings, and it's one of the producers or something. They say, put Melissa on. So she gets on the phone, and they kick us out of the house. We got kicked out of the house. I'm not sure what it was from. It could have been that sound guy quitting, got us kicked out of the house. It could have been one of the other roommates. There was one other guy there. I don't think he liked us very much because we're going ape shit. But yeah, we got kicked out of the real world house, dude. So we get kicked out. We're like, well, what do? We have no place to stay. We have to play the show the next day. And she's like, I'm pretty pissed. I'm like, well, dude, fuck MTV, man. I don't want them there anyways. Because the whole thing was, we found out later this was an episode that was focused on Melissa and where she came from and her friends.
Oh, no.
So they have this they have an episode written where, Melissa's friends from the band come up and they stay the night. And then we're going to follow this band to their show in Baton Rouge, which I was never cool with. I don't think any of us, I think we're all pretty uncomfortable with that idea. But we're like, whatever. Maybe it'll be cool. But, we get kicked out of the house and we're just kind of sitting on the street. It's nighttime. We're like, dude, what are we going to do? Are we going to play this show? Just try to find a hotel? We're all pretty broke, and it's expensive on St. Charles Street. So I was like, we're going to hit the Baton Rouge, find a cheap hotel. But I think the whole thing was we're supposed to take Melissa. So we have to decide. The whole thing was like, Melissa, can you call them and say, we don't want the MTV cameras there, but can you still go to the show without them? So she asked us, said no. If she goes, we go. So then we just decided not to play the show. So we're just kind of back and forth, getting loud about it on the street. Not really an argument, but just a heated discussion about what we're going to do. And apparently we're too loud. And then some lady comes out and she starts yelling at us. She goes, I got a baby sleeping up here. And I guess I told her, I yelled back at her, lady, you can take that baby and shove it up your ass. And then she got fucking stupid. I'm calling the cops. So she goes and calls the cops. We're like, fuck, we got to get out of here. We start to hear some, several minutes. We start hearing some sirens. We get in the van and we just haul ass. That was the furthest we drove to not play a show ever. And we got kicked out of the Real World house.
I hope you enjoyed that episode. I might make some more in the future. If you do like them, just let me know in the comments on Instagram, or you can email me at thiswasthescene@gmail.com. That's all I got to say. So until next time, take care of yourself and each other.